I wanted to make a quick video on Daniel 9:27 and why we know it refers to Antichrist and not the Messiah. Take a look at what some of our opponents have said about this passage. We have Henry Gradam Guinness, who's an old historicist, and he said one of the gravest evils of futurism is the terrible way in which it tampers with this great fundamental prophecy, Daniel 9:27, applying to the future doings of some ideal Antichrist its divine description of the past deeds of the historic Christ. So, how dare us tamper with this passage like that? Kim Riddlebarger says, the failure to acknowledge the obvious covenantal context of the messianic covenant maker of verse 27, who confirms a covenant with many, leads dispensationalists to confuse Christ with Antichrist. A more serious interpretive error is hard to imagine. The truth is, put a stop to sacrifice is just one of three themes in Daniel 9:27, which are very clear and obvious Antichrist themes. It's so perfectly obvious that this verse is about the Antichrist and not Jesus that even a caveman can do it. So let's take a look at all three of these themes and you'll see what I mean. The first theme that you find throughout Daniel's prophecies is this theme, put a stop to sacrifice. And it's an act in which a tyrant will basically halt the worship of the Jewish people. And it's prophesied of the end times Antichrist in Daniel 9:27 that he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. It's also prophesied of the same man in Daniel 7:25 that he will intend to make alterations in times and in law. And again, of the same man, it's prophesied in Daniel 12, from the time that the regular sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. You see, the regular sacrifice is abolished. These are all referring to the same thing, this putting a stop to sacrifice. It's not a thing to celebrate as Christ's blood on the cross. There's no reason to say it that way. That's just not what it means in Daniel. Furthermore, this was prefigured through a tyrant known as Antiochus IV Epiphanes. And there's prophecies in Daniel that pinpoint him as a sort of prefigure of the final end times tyrant. And he performed an action that is very much like what we'll see in the future. And it involves putting a stop to sacrifice. You see this in Daniel 8, verses 9 to 14, where it says, it removed the regular sacrifice from him. The host will be given over to the horn along with the regular sacrifice. And then down below, people are asking about this vision. How long will the vision about the regular sacrifice apply? So they're talking about this removal of the regular sacrifice. And Antiochus IV Epiphanes fulfilled this again. In Daniel 11:31, I want to point out, Daniel 11:31 is such a crystal clear parallel to Daniel 9:27 that there is no excuse for misunderstanding Daniel 9:27. Okay? But in Daniel 11:31 it says, forces from him will arise, desecrate the sanctuary fortress, and do away with the regular sacrifice, and they will set up the abomination of desolation. And that was fulfilled by Antiochus Epiphanes. So this should give you an idea of what put a stop to sacrifice means. It doesn't refer to Christ on the cross. It refers to something else. And that's one of the themes in Daniel 9:27. There's a second theme, the abomination of desolation. This is prophesied of the end times tyrant. Daniel 9:27. On the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate. And in Daniel 7:25, he will intend to make alterations in times and in law. And in Daniel 12 again, from the time that the regular sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. So this erection of the abomination of desolation is performed by the same man. Did Jesus perform an abomination of desolation? No, he did not. Now, the abomination of desolation was prefigured in the actions of Antiochus Epiphanes. And we find this, as it was prophesied at the time, in Daniel chapter 8. And it says here, it magnified itself to be equal with the commander of the host. The place of his sanctuary was thrown down. It will fling truth to the ground and perform its will and prosper. And finally, the transgression causes horror so as to allow both the holy place and the host to be trampled. This is talking about Antiochus Epiphanes and when he put a stop to the temple worship and erected abomination of desolation. This is about the middle of the 2nd century BC. You can read about it in 1 Maccabees and in Josephus. I'll provide a link to material on Antiochus Epiphanes in the description under the video. But in Daniel 11:31 then again, forces from him will arise, desecrate the sanctuary fortress, and do away with the regular sacrifice, and they will set up the abomination of desolation. The third theme in Daniel 9:27 is an appointed time when this future tyrant will severely persecute the Jewish people. And it'll last for 3.5 years. And that is found in Daniel 9:27. In the middle of the week is when he puts a stop to sacrifice and erects this abomination of desolation. But even until the complete destruction of this man, he will terrify Israel. So it's basically the second half of the 70th week. In Daniel 7:25, it refers to this same period of time. The Jews, they will be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. Okay? And then the other parallel verse, again in Daniel 12, the underlined portions here, there will be a time of distress such as never occurred since there was a nation until that time. And it would be for a time, times, and half a time. And it goes on to give other descriptions of the time involved. But it's a specific time of divine judgment on Israel and a time of tyranny by this man against the nation. Those three themes are all present in Daniel 9:27. It makes it abundantly clear that the he is referring to the prince, the people of the prince to come. It's an awkward passage grammatically, but this context makes it very clear who's being talked about. It parallels all the other Antichrist prophecies. It parallels Antiochus Epiphanes. He's a perfect prefigure of this coming tyrant against Israel. So when you understand these themes involved in Daniel 9, it's easy to see, isn't it? Yeah, Daniel 9:27 definitely refers to Antichrist, not Messiah. And for Riddleberger and Guinness to get all upset, oh, how dare they, oh. Well, I'll tell you what, they're applying Antichrist themes, very obvious ones, to Jesus. And I think that's kind of blasphemous.